Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown, Vols fans. I'm your host, Bull. It's time for our day 11 of fall camp news, notes, and thoughts. As always, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Really big shout out to all the members of this channel. You can become a member and help to support us by clicking that join button just below this video. You will get exclusive content that we can't share on this side of YouTube. Also, a really big shout out to everyone that's been joining us on Patreon. That link will be down in the description below. And everyone that is donating to this channel, you can donate by scanning the Cash App QR code in the top right-hand corner of this video with your smartphone. If you're watching from your smartphone, that will also be down in the description below. And if you want to contact us, we have all of our social medias and our email down there in the description. So really, the email, I think, would be the best way for you to contact us. So keep that in mind. Thank you all so much for all of the support. Let's go ahead and jump into the video. Now, for the injury report, this is going to look a lot cleaner than it has before because I took all the players that were just in red non-contact jerseys, but we had marked down as limited. I took them off of this list. So just talking about the limited players, Jordan Burns still has not practiced in all of fall camp as far as we know. Dylan Sampson, he's out there getting mental reps, but we already know he's probably not a whole lot wrong with him. We just want to be very cautious and make sure that he's ready for week one. And then going back up to the top, we have Ricky Gibson, who we'll talk about a little bit more here in just a second. And then obviously Jordan Thomas is going to be out for the season. So back to Ricky Gibson, sounds like he has a sore hamstring. And as we kind of talked about in the previous video, whenever you have a cornerback or any skill position that is dealing with any sort of a, pull, strain, any of that type of stuff, especially in fall camp, preseason type stuff, you want to leave them out. Like, you just want to get them back healthy, especially if you think, and, you pretty much know, because I would say at this point, we know Ricky Gibson's going to be one of our starting cornerbacks. Leave him out. There's no need. He doesn't need any more reps. Let him get back healthy. That's more important. And, instead of him having a lingering hamstring issue for the entire season. So it sounds like that is what we're doing. And I do love to see that. I really wouldn't be surprised or mad if he sits out for the rest of fall camp. Now on to the media. We heard from Coach Sims, who is the running backs coach. We heard from Khalifa Keith, Deshaun Bishop. Both of those are running backs. We also heard from Caleb Webb and Chris Brazzell. So starting off with Coach Sims, the running backs coach, sounds like he really likes his room. There's a whole lot of confidence. This is kind of permeating from him and everything that he had to say. Talked a whole lot about Peyton Lewis as a true freshman. He said, listen, whenever he puts his pads on, looks like a grown man out there. And, he loves the way that he's attacking each day, whether it's, in mental reps inside of that film room or on the field. He said that you can see that he's very explosive and he's got the capabilities and that he's not afraid to stick his face in there in pass protection. He actually talked a lot about pass protection. We'll get to that a little bit more here in just a minute. He also talked about Dylan Sampson not really getting a whole lot of reps, especially at this point in fall camp. He said, look, man, he knows what he's supposed to do, and we understand that. We know that he's going to be the starter for us. So coach up these younger guys, get some more mental reps and keep yourself healthy for week one, like we just talked about. Also talked about Cam Seldon coming off of an injury, and it sounds like he is going to be ready for week one. Again, if he plays, we just don't know. I don't think that there's any need for him to play in week one. It's more important to see what your depth looks like and see, who's going to be, running back number 3, 4, 5, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that that's going to be the game plan moving forward. But I still think that before the end of fall camp, we will see him getting some real physical contact on a very limited basis. But we are starting to see him getting hit with, dummies and pads and things like that more and more. So that's a great sign for us as volunteer fans. It also sounds like he's doing a good job of just attacking those mental reps whenever he's in, film session and all of that. Now, he also spoke some about Deshaun Bishop. He said, look, he's a guy that he's going to get stronger as the game goes on. Talked about his short area quickness, just being a dog, being confident. Definitely heard that, and we'll talk a little bit more about Deshaun here in just a second. And he said that, Khalifa Keith is a guy who has come a long way from spring where, he's understanding what to do. He understood it then, but now he's playing without thinking as much. In football, especially on this level, you can't do a whole bunch of thinking because it'll slow you down. You've got to play with speed. So that makes me feel really good. Now, let's talk about Deshaun Bishop because he's a guy that's permeating with confidence. One of my biggest takeaways was someone had asked him, hey, are you expecting to get some rotation or, whatever he had asked. And Deshaun looked at him like, what? Like, yeah, I'm definitely expecting to get out there and play and get into the mix. So you love that confidence. And I would say that for the entire running back room, they're all very confident. We talked a lot about Peyton Lewis kind of sitting back in his chair in his interview with the media. I already know that Cam Seldon is very, very confident. Obviously, Dylan Sampson and Khalifa Keith, who we'll get to here in just a minute. But, Bishop talked a whole lot about just coming off of his injury, kind of, growing up some, because especially whenever you come into college as a true freshman in this league, I mean, you're pretty much like a little celebrity inside of that little city. And it can get to your head. So it sounds like maybe he was dealing with some of that, but now that he's more focused and he's locked in, I love what he can bring to this team. You could just tell that he's grown up a whole lot. So that makes me feel good. And again, I absolutely love his confidence. Now on to Khalifa Keith. He also permeated a whole bunch of confidence. He said, hey, listen, I know that I'm a strong guy. I'm a powerful guy, talking about pass protection, things like that. So, he said, I just had to kind of figure out what to do. And now I'm able to actually go out there and execute it. And, he understands what to do in those short yardage situations, which is where we think that he will be utilized at the most. But hearing him talking about, look, once I get up to that second level with those linebackers, I want to be able to make a miss. And I think that that's big because you don't want to have a running back that's just primarily focused on, hey, I'm going to truck everyone that I see. That's not a good place to be. You got to truck them some, especially if you're looked at as the short yardage back, which it also sounds like, going back to Coach Sims, that Khalifa Keith has figured it out. Hey, if it ain't no room for me to run, I'm just going to run straight through that wall. That's what we expected from him. That's what we talked about in spring. But it does sound like he is doing that and he understands. But once you get up to that second level, you get past that line of scrimmage, at some point, you're going to have to try to make people miss because you can't just come with the same thing every single time. Because once you do that, you're going to start to get very stagnant in your gameplay. So I trust that entire room. I think that we're going to be just fine right there. Like I keep on telling you, I feel more and more confident every single time that I see them or hear any of them speak. But, I took a whole lot of good things away from hearing Coach Sims and two of our, redshirt freshmen speak about that room. Now going on to Chris Brazzell, he sounded pretty confident. He didn't sound as confident as he probably, is out there on the field, because we've heard some coaches saying, yeah, he likes to get out there and talk. And there was one point where he had talked about winning on an inside route versus one of our cornerbacks or, one of our secondary pieces. And he was like, yeah, I definitely let them know about that. I love that. Okay. Like, you need to have that sort of confidence playing in this league again, especially versus teams like UGA that's going to hold you, right? A whole lot of times referees just aren't calling that. So you got to have that confidence to say, look, I'm going to make the play regardless of if it's one person guarding me, two people guarding me, and y'all are both trying to hold me down. I'm a dog. So Chris Brazzell is most definitely a dog. I definitely took that away from what he had to say. But he also spoke some about just the entire secondary. He talked about Ricky Gibson being a guy that's going to be physical with you, especially at that line of scrimmage. And, he talked about Jamal McCoy being a guy that's a really good athlete. So you got to beat him more with finesse. And he talked about Jalen McMurray being a player that is a little bit more patient. So I love the fact that he understands that at the wide receiver position. That's high level, because obviously you've got the talent, like you've got the size, all of that. But once you understand, hey, look, going versus this person, going versus that person, I've got to change up a few things subtly. That is what we've said so many different times, takes you from good to great. I think that he's going to be a great wide receiver inside of our system. And he said, look, all I needed to do was figure out, how to do certain things on different individual plays without having to think about it, because we run so many different option routes. So you could say, okay, I'm looking at a pre-snap and you're thinking too much. And then once you see exactly what the defense is doing, you might kind of change your thought process. That slows you down. But whenever you can just react instead of thinking, then you're going to make a whole bunch of plays. So that's the point that he's gotten to now. And that's why he's being so dominant. I'm very much looking forward to Chris Brazzell this season. Now, Caleb Webb talked about the competition inside of that room and just kind of, having that red non-contact jersey on for like a day or two. And he didn't necessarily say it this way, but you could just kind of tell that because of the competition inside of that room, everybody wanting to play, he said, look, I got to get up out of this non-contact jersey, get back out on the field so that I can kind of maintain my spot or still have an opportunity to move up that depth chart. That's big. He also talked a whole lot about Chris Brazzell's crazy catch that we had touched on in the previous video, I believe, and that was just a circus catch. But again, just kind of going back to Chris Brazzell real quick, he's a guy that reminds me a lot of Plexico Burris and also Randy Moss. He's going to make those types of catches that are going to be ESPN probably every single weekend. But I was very impressed with what Caleb Webb had to say. Just talking about, look, you come to the SEC for that competition to get better, to get to your ceiling. And I think that he's another one that will have a really, really big year. Now let's talk about our team, what I saw from the field, all the news and notes from the insiders. Number one, I'll say this team is looking really, really good. I feel like we look a lot more healthy. I think that we look a lot more fresh than we did at this point last season in fall camp. So let's keep that in mind. But we'll start off with the offense, and we will start with the offensive line. Love what I saw from them. A whole lot of burst, a whole lot of pop. And I will tell you this, it sounds like the starters for today's practice were Lance Hurd at left tackle, Jackson Lampley starting at left guard, Cooper Mays is at center, Spraggs is at right guard, and then we had Dane Davis starting at right tackle. Now, Dane Davis is starting at right tackle because we're limiting the amount of reps that John Campbell gets, but I do feel like John Campbell is going to be ready in week 1. How much does he play? How much do any of those starters play in that game versus UT Chat? I don't think it's going to be a whole lot. In a perfect world, just inside of my mind, it would only be for like a quarter. But either way, I love the pop. I love the burst. Whole lot of versatility. I think that our run game will pick up from where it was last season, just because the offensive line I think is going to look even better in run blocking, because we look so quick, we look so fast and explosive and physical, and we're deep inside of that offensive line. Now let's talk about that running back room. We just touched on them some. We saw them catching some balls, not really out of the backfield, more so at the slot position. But this is something else that Coach Sims had touched on. Said, listen, we trust all those guys to go out there and make catches. And I think that we'll use that a lot more this season. That's going to be really big, just to kind of, mix some things up. We also saw Deshaun Bishop running kind of like a wildcat. So that's another wrinkle that I don't think that I've seen since Coach Heupel's been up on campus. Whole lot to look forward to out of that group. Looking really good, just kind of going through all those drills. Iron sharpens iron. It sounds like they are encouraging one another. That's really big. Now for the quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends, the insiders got to see them do some one-on-ones down in the red zone versus our defense. And we'll go through everything that they brought to us, but just keep in mind that the offense is at a very big advantage in any one-on-one situation. Now we'll start off with Miles Kitselman beating Andre Turntine. Mike Matthews beat Boo Carter. Caleb Webb beat Jalen McMurray. Mike Matthews also beat Caleb Beasley, but he dropped the pass. Jalen McMurray was able to win a rep versus Holden Stays. Ethan Davis won a rep down in the red zone. Chris Brazel was able to beat Jamal McCoy. Nathan Leacock won a rep versus a walk-on. Will Brooks made a really nice break. Sounds like he almost got a pick right there. Chaz Nimrod was able to beat Christian Charles. Jordan Matthews was able to beat Brew. I think that's a really big one. Ethan Davis also made a really nice catch on a fade. Jalen McMurray broke up a pass whenever he was guarding Caleb Webb. Squirrel White was able to dominate Christian Harrison. That might be a little bit concerning, but at the same time, like we said, these are just one-on-one, so that's probably to be expected. Squirrel White is a dog. Mike Matthews and Chris Brazel each had one more touchdown catch. Jordan Matthews lost to Brew McCoy, so sounds like that one went back and forth. Miles Kitselman was able to body up Andre Turntine, and then Chaz Nimrod was able to beat Boo Carter. So it sounds like the offense was pretty dominant in the one-on-ones today, but that is, again, to be expected. We'll see what happens in the scrimmage tomorrow once it's a full game. It's 11 on 11 because in the previous one, the defense was dominant. So hopefully both of them will come along. I don't really care who wins necessarily, but I want to see a good back and forth. And I do feel like the defense held their own from what we could see. Now let's talk about our defensive line. We already know how deep it is, but every time that I watch them go to work, I'm seeing more and more explosiveness. Feels like they're really, really fresh for this point in fall camp. And I think that it will maintain that way throughout the entire season because we're so deep. We have so many different bodies. But every time that you watch them go to work, you see maybe one or two players that you say, oh, you know what? I kind of forgot about this player, but they look really good. So expecting for them to go out there and eat and probably go down as maybe the best defensive line that Tennessee has ever had. And I would even say this, it could end up going down as one of the best defensive lines in the history of college football. And I understand what I'm saying whenever I say that. Those are big shoes to fill, but I just feel like we're so deep and we have so many players that can really get after it. And their mindset, the way that they're attacking each day, leads me to believe that if they stay balled in, that they can kind of carry on that momentum throughout the entire season. And it is going to be a long one. Now let's talk about our linebackers. Saw them in pass coverage, saw them kind of getting after the passer, getting off blocks, the normal stuff that they do pretty much every single day. My biggest takeaway with them is that we look so much better playing out in space than we did last season or really in any season with Coach Heupel. And I'm going to probably say this in every single video, but Arion Carter, I feel like is going to have an absolutely tremendous season. Now, for those of y'all that don't know, Eric Berry is my favorite Vol of all time, and he had some phenomenal seasons with us. I think that he played the game in a way that was conducive to him making plays. I see the same things out of Arion Carter because he's such a good athlete, but whenever you play with that edge, like whenever there's a little bit more oomph to it, a little bit more passion to it, you can have a guy that could play along the same types of lines as an Eric Berry, especially with him playing at the will where he's going to be able to roam free and make more plays. I think that he's going to have an absolutely outstanding season this year. But obviously everyone else looks really good. You know, Keenan Pili looks good. Jeremiah Thielander, Edwin Spillman looks good. Jalen Smith looks good. Eli Purcell, just that entire room, they look great from top to bottom. Now let's move on to that secondary. What I noticed here is number one, I mean, you see them kind of going through all the rest. There's a whole lot of competition right there, which is the way that you like it. But I mean, we have so many really good athletes that look great in their transitions. There's a whole lot of pop, a whole lot of burst. We don't know what's going to happen at the star position. Come week 2, come week 3, is it going to be Christian Harrison? Is it going to be Boo Carter? I think that competition is still pretty open. I lean a little bit more towards Christian Harrison just because he's more of a veteran. But we have no idea what's going to happen. I think that Boo Carter is a guy that can go out there and play at a really, really high level. But the two starting cornerbacks will more than likely be, again, by week 2 or 3, Ricky Gibson and Jamal McCoy. Love those guys. Hopefully, Ricky Gibson can get himself back healthy. Don't know who the starters are going to be at safety. Obviously, Andre Turrentine has been the one constant there, but I still really like John Slaughter. I love Kobe Thomas, and I think that Will Brooks can kind of get some things done for you. My only thing about Will Brooks, like I always say, is he going to do a good enough job in pass coverage in certain situations when you can get isolated playing safety. Now, playing at the star position, depending on how we're going to run our coverages and who's out there, you can have some help over the top with the safeties. You cannot really scheme help over the top, with safeties or behind safeties. So that's why I say you got to be kind of careful putting the Will Brooks out there. But hey, listen, if the staff puts him out there, I'm just going to trust them to understand all these types of situations and and they feel confident that he can go out there and perform at a really, really high level. But all in all, y'all, I just feel like, again, man, this team is so healthy. We're so deep at this point in fall camp. Knock on wood that the scrimmage tomorrow, goes well and we come up out of that one healthy. If that happens, I think that, you might kind of see us dial it back some with players that may have been going before. Maybe they don't even go as much as they have been because now you're saying, okay, we understand, right? I feel like coming out of scrimmage 2, we're going to have a much better idea of who the starters will be. There will obviously always be some competition, but the guys that we know are going to be starters, get them on up out of there, man. Like, let them kind of rehab, let them get healthy, let them get fresh, and get some mental reps and coach up the rest of our team. But this is going to be a very special year, y'all. I know I probably say this in every single one of these videos, but I cannot say it enough. You need to be excited about our Volunteers. If you haven't already got tickets, it's time for you to go ahead and start doing that for sure, because we're going to win, I would say, most, if not all, of our games this year. Love the way that we're trending, loving everything that I'm seeing and hearing behind the scenes. It's going to be a great year for our Volunteers. But as always, y'all, please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other Volunteer fans. We'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.